Finally close to their destination, the travelers approach the town square, ready for a supper and a mug of beer. Alone in the center of the square is an old priest. His gaze stops the adventurers in their tracks, and one by one the lanterns come alight. A trap! The priest has summoned fearsome elementals.
What is up? Welcome back to the Craft Lair. I am the Crafter. This is the Lair. Today we are in part 2 of our 3-part video series dealing with roads and roads accessories, propane and propane accessories. We are going to be putting together some 3D printed lampposts, as well as soldering those all together and using a flickering LED tealight to illuminate those lamps. It's going to be awesome. Stick around.
So, jumping into the 3D model, we have this here. It comes with a base that can hold the tealight. A modified tealight that is, and I'll show you that process. The main column is the same as the signpost from my previous build. It fits a 22 AWG wire right up on through. You can wire that through the arm of the lantern. There's also a small cap for the bottom. I didn't end up using that, but it's there if you want to use that on your build. Just laying out the pieces here, making sure I have all of them accounted for. One thing I want to note is that you're going to want to print this using transparent resin.
So I'm ready to begin compiling all of the little lanterns. I'm going to do a test fitting before I prime these. That way I can make sure all the wiring and tealights and things like that will fit into these. And then we'll spray paint those and get to assembling all of these little lampposts. I'll also be making a small base for this, since the base that comes with it could use a little blending into maybe some surrounding terrain. So I'm thinking about using a little bit of foam core and sticking this right into that. So I'm going to be building that as well.
So I'm just doing a fit test here, making sure all of the things align and will go together seamlessly. I'm using a little $10 soldering iron that I got from Amazon for, just a few dollars. It included quite a bit of different materials, including some wire as well as tweezers, a pretty crappy wire stripper, a soldering iron holder, things like that. Going through here and just making sure that the connections work and that this will work. I'll link to the wire that I used on Amazon. I didn't end up using the wire that came with the soldering iron. I actually used 22 AWG speaker wire. To get this to fit, I had to unscrew the bottom of the tealight, and with a little bit of pressure and pulling on that screw, you can remove the shroud that surrounds the main tealight electronics. From there, you can snip off the LED. I didn't realize when I had started this build that this is actually a flickering LED. I had assumed that the LED would flicker based on the electronics in the tealight itself, but that wasn't the case. So if I was going to rebuild these, I would definitely try to reuse those same LEDs so you get the flickering effect. Right now, the LEDs that I use are static. They don't flicker at all. So using the soldering iron and just attaching the LED. This was honestly a bit tricky. It was especially tricky to get on camera. The LED is 2 different leads, a positive and a negative. The longer lead is going to be the positive, and I'm going to be rigging that to the red wire shown here, and then the black will go to the negative terminal of the tealight base. So after fumbling with it all night, I took a break and came back at it in the morning. I've cut away the extra plastic that protects some of the wiring within the tealight base, just so it fits inside the lantern tealight base better. And you'll see you have to run the wire through. I cut an angle on the wires so it's almost like a sharp point, and that's able to run through this easier. Once you pull that all through, you can separate those 2 wires and use a wire stripper to reveal some of the wires, and we solder on our LED. So again, just doing a fit test. We want to pull them taut. And I'm using a piece of electrical tape to protect the inside there. And there's plenty of room for the wire to coil up within the base if you do have extra wire. I'm just using some baking soda here as a super glue accelerant and gluing all of these pieces securely together. And a bit of hot glue to secure the tealight electronics into the 3D printed base. With the tealights completed, I wanted to build some bases that could blend in with the roads I had made in the previous build. So to do that, I'm using a piece of foam core and just cutting that to size, as well as marking out the center circle of where I'll need to cut a hole in that foam core so you can still reach the switch on the bottom of the tealight electronics. So just kind of eyeballing the measurements, but as long as the base fits snugly, that works fine. I cut the hole, and I did my best to do that as cleanly as possible. Again, I did a bit of beveling here just to make the edge a little more flush to the table. Mixing up some drywall joint compound. This stuff is great. It dries in about 45 minutes. It will form a pretty solid base. It adds a little bit of weight, which I like, and it really just blends in the plastic part to the foam core base itself. With that complete, I'm putting on some PVA glue and some coarse aggregate construction sand. This isn't washed play sand. This has more varying sizes of pebbles in it, and just using a lot of PVA glue to get those to stick, and I'm going to apply that on all of the lantern bases. Once that's done, we can let it dry overnight and come back in the morning with some Mod Podge to just really secure all of that stuff down. From there, I'm using some blue masking tape to conceal the transparent lantern top. I don't want to get my primer sprayed onto that because I need that to remain transparent for the lighting effect to work. So doing my best to keep that as clean as possible, and then going in with some black spray paint. This is just cheap black primer. I don't use fancy expensive primers for this. The cheap stuff works fine for this. Going in with some brown craft paint and my airbrush, giving everything a very heavy coat. You'll see I'm keeping the masking tape on for the majority of this process. I also have a guest airbrusher coming in to help me paint some of these bases, and just building those up a little bit lighter from the original brown. From there, I'm going through and adding some Vallejo Desert Dust. This is a weathering pigment that makes the effect look really natural and great, and then using some hairspray to secure all that down. For the lantern posts themselves, I go through with a bit of Nuln oil to bring out some of the details in the lantern posts themselves. From there, I've removed the masking tape, and I'm going through and doing all of the black details on each of the lanterns. This was a bit of a slow process. I'm then going in with some Agrax Earthshade and painting those into the panes of the lantern to give it a little bit of an old weathered effect. I'm applying some static grass now. This is using a static grass applicator that I got off eBay for about $25, and some Woodland Scenics straw static grass mixed with some green, giving that a pretty liberal coat of static grass on everything. From there, I'm going to go in and dry brush in some light browns onto this to make the wood look a bit weathered, as well as some ink to again bring back some of those brown tones, and lastly a bit of some Bell Tan green to make the wood look a little bit moldy and rain soaked. From there, I'm using some Vallejo earth pigments again to bring in some of the detail into the base, and securing that all down with some hairspray. I'm going to use a spritz of isopropyl alcohol and some Woodland Scenics spray tack. The alcohol helps the spray tack spread better into all the little nooks and crannies of the static grass, and then the steam tack works really great to stick everything down. From there, what I like to do is base all of these so that the bottoms of these are nice and clean. And to do that, I use rubber cement. So this goes on dry. So basically you apply it to one side, let it dry, apply it to the other side, let it dry. And once those both sides are dry and you stick them together, it forms a very strong bond. So by doing that, I can cut around the base with an X-Acto knife and get a really clean, nice black base. So that about completes this part of the project. I hope you guys enjoyed it and might have learned something new. I really am happy with the way these turned out and couldn't be more excited to get them down on my table. I know once I flick those on, all of my players are going to lose their minds. Be sure to stick around. I'm going to be putting out videos as often as possible, giving away STL files as often as possible. Your subscription really means a lot. It keeps me motivated to keep on going, so be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell so you're alerted when new posts come online. Again, I am the Crafter. This is the Lair. I'll see you next time.